why can't a and va appear altogether? Okay. So also, more generally, we are curious about where does this va come from? Okay, and we can already, when we're looking at Kashmiri, you have inav. Okay, and I think is the Gujarati causative form vav? Av or vav, right? So you can see that there's something going on with this av or vav, but this is something we would like to know. Why don't these two exponents appear together when in fact it looks like the va causative is in fact operating on the transitive? Okay. Not me. I don't think you can get a say. I don't think you can get a say in most R causatives. Most importantly. So now we are coming, in fact, to some cases, some rather surprising cases where the R causative and the Va causative seem to be, when I say synonymous, I don't necessarily mean that they have exactly the same truth conditions, but argument structure wise they seem to me to be similar. Okay, so I can say Ram ne dil se kaam karwaya, but I think I can also say Ram ne dil se kaam karaya. Ram ne Ramesh se kaam karaya is okay for me. Okay, so what this means is that karaya and karvaya, for some reason, the R and the Va causative. So this is why I was hedging earlier when I was saying that R causatives are not always direct causatives. So what are, and this is actually also one reason why I think that we want to think this overlap is one reason why we don't want to put everything on Va. You don't want to say Va means indirect causation. Though that is true that whenever you see Va, you have indirect causation. So, but I want to push like a more structural idea, and the idea is that once you go past a certain level in the structure, you get indirect causation. Okay, and so the thought is that kar is big in a certain way, and then after that, whatever you put on top of it is going to give you indirect causation. So Ram ne dil se kaam karaya, Ram ne dil se kaam karwaya. Okay, so karana and karwana seem to mean the same thing to me. Okay, similarly, and maybe here your judgments will vary. If you try to make a causative of dena, right? If you make the R causative, you will get dilana, and if you make the Va causative, you get dilvana. Okay. To me, dilana and dilvana are very close in meaning. At least both license intermediate agents. Ram ne dil se Sita ko kitab dilai. Ram ne dil se Sita ko kitab dilwai. So, if you have intuitions about this, think about whether there are differences in meaning. I would not be surprised if there are differences if they separate themselves out, because generally in languages don't like to have two forms doing exactly the same work, so often forms get specialized. But it seems to me that they, to the first cut, they seem to mean similar things. So what we see is that there is a class of verbs for which the A forms and the Va forms have the same effect. Okay, so that's also what we would, and it turns out that there's going to be a very interestingly nice characterization of the verbs where this happens, where A and Va collapse. Okay, and then of course we want to understand the structures of the various causatives. Okay. Okay, so now I want to show you a different kind of picture. This is not the picture that we will ultimately adopt, but I think it's an interesting picture to consider. I call it a traditional picture because it's stated in directional terms. So we will start with an idea that an operation applies to a basic form to yield a derived form, and in this section, in which I've called a traditional picture, I'm going to use the term causative in a different way. Yes. Yeah. I can show it to you right now, or well, I can point the indirect. I don't want to draw it just right now because it will take us too far afield. But maybe there is such a tree somewhere in the handout. Yeah. So I mean, I can tell you roughly what we would do there. The idea that I pursue, so a lot of what I'm describing here is joint work with David Embick. So the idea that we pursued was that an indirect causative is in effect embedding a verb, embedding a passive substructure. So let's take an example, Jalwana, right? So in that case, what the zamindar is doing is he's embedding a structure where he's the agent of an event which causes a passive event. So it's literally the zamindar had the house burnt, and then by the dacoits is a byphrase. So the top event is embedding an event without an overt agent, which is then specified by the byphrase. Okay, so let's start with this traditional picture. So the traditional picture says, look, there are some verbs that the vowel alternation applies to basic transitives. So Bhatna, it says, let's take the morphology seriously and say that Bhatna is the transitive is the basic, and then there is an operation that applies which takes you from the basic transitive to the anti-transitive, so or the intransitive, right? So you go from 15A, सिकंदर स्कूल के बाहर टॉफियां बांट रहा है, that's the transitive, and then you intransitivize it and you get स्कूल के बाहर टॉफियां बट रही हैं. Okay. So that's the anti-transitive. And then there are verbs which are basic transitives, which are words like jal. So जंगल जल रहा है, 16A, and then you transitivize it and you get 16B, सिपाही जंगल जला रहे हैं. Okay. So this is taking the morphology very at face value, and it's saying if you some words are basic transitives and some words are basic intransitives. Okay. So yeah, very, very good question. How do we decide? Here what this is saying is, look at the morphology. Jala is complex, right? Jala is jal plus a. Jal is just jal. Yeah, so with Bant, what we say is, what's going on with Bant is, yeah, so I'm going to we'll come to this when we start looking at these more carefully. Morphophonologically, it turns out that if you can only describe this in a reliable way going from the transitive to the intransitive. There is no way to write down the rule, because when you go from the transitive to the intransitive, you lose information, morphophonological information. So if you set it up from transitive to intransitive, you can write down the rule. There is no way to write the rule in the other direction. So that's the motivation. But we will look at that. Okay. So these are two classes. Then we come to a third class. Okay. The third class is a very interesting class. This is called the class of ingestive transitives, and sometimes they also have the very medical sounding name ingestor-reflexive. The ingestor-reflexive class. So the ingestor-reflexive class, they are verbs of physical or sensory ingestion. So khana is a very good example. To eat but also to drink, pina, okay, and also to hear, sunna, okay, to read or study, padhna, to learn, seekhna, taste, chakna, to see, dekhna. All of these things, there's something about ingesting something. So what happens with these is very interesting. These are all transitives, and when you take these transitives and you put an "a" on them, you get a ditransitive. Okay. So this is what I meant, that this is what I said in your verb classification project. Look carefully at the ditransitives. You will find that most of the ditransitives are actually, in these terms, they're derived. They are derived from transitives. But there is something which is, okay, I'll come back to this, okay. And then, once we are done with this, so you have 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, let's turn the page. So, in this is what I'm calling the traditional picture, right? Now we come to what we will call the causative, okay? So, we are reserving the term causative for this last part now. So, in the last part, what we say is, well, if you have a basic transitive, and you form a causative of a basic transitive. If you can take a basic transitive and make a causative out of it, a derived causative. So this is in 18. Malini ghar ka kaam kar rahi hai. And then the derived causative is Malini नौकरानी से घर का काम करवा रही है. Okay. You can also make a derived causative, derived transitive. Okay. Yeah, you can also make a causative from a derived transitive. Okay, so सिपाही जंगल जला रहे हैं, and now you can do राजा सिपाहियों से जंगल जलवा रहा है. Okay, and you can also make a causative of a basic ditransitive. So नाजिया रमोना को तोहफा दे रही है, and you can make a causative. Zohair नाजिया से रमोना को तोहफा दिलवा रहा है. Okay, so this picture sort of operates pretty close to the surface. There's one mystery here. If you look at the derived ditrans, like section 2, the 2.3, where we had the class of ingestive transitives. There seems to be a gap here, which is, as far as I can tell, none of the words that participate, that give you the derived, that give you this derived ditransitive, have intransitives. Okay. So let me give you examples. So basically, we have, okay, you could imagine, so let's say this is the intransitive, transitive, ditransitive, causative. Let's call it the indirect causative. Yes.
You are deriving 19B from 19A.
Let me just look at it. 19B from 19A. Yes.
Why not from 16?
Why? Yes. Why not from Jal? Yes. So because the Jal form does not have an agent itself, right? So it's just Jangal Jal Raha hai. So I'm sort of working with the idea that to do an indirect causative of something, that something has to have an agent. So somebody does something, and then what you say is, I had it done through them. But if you directly try to, but I mean morphologically, this is a very good question. Why am I assuming that the indirect causative applies on a transitive, and this is something I think I will get to. But I want to show you a kind of a gap. So look at this. We've talked about it. There are intransitives, transitives, ditransitives, and indirect causatives. So in principle, you would expect, there are 4 distinctions. So in principle, you would expect at least some verbs which would have one die in each of these. Okay? But actually, what we find remarkably is that no verb has more than 3, no root fills more than 3 of these spots. Okay, so let's just do an example. So let's do jalna. Okay, but, batwa, okay, and then you will have things like kha, and also we have things like khulana, uh, no. Yeah, you could also put khul. Okay, and I'll say one more thing. If I predict the following thing. If for some reason we did say khulana, it would mean the same thing as khulwana. That's the thing. So I'm not blocking. Right, and okay. So here's the thing, that the traditional picture that I had does not say anything why, despite having 4 columns, no root appears in more than 3 of them. This is a very odd gap. Somehow the system should explain this. I have one thought about this, which is that basically in terms of, so I don't exactly know how to state it properly, but the generalization I think is clear, which is in any given structure, you can apply direct causativization once. So maybe we can just say it in the following way. In any given structure, you can apply direct causativization once and indirect causativization once. So all you have 2 hops available. There aren't 3 hops available. So it's not the case, but the way it's set up there, in principle, there's no reason to believe. So the gap is this. Verbs which have intransitives don't have ditransitives, and verbs that do this don't do this. Right. And under the traditional picture, this is a complete mystery. This is a utter mystery, because you could say, let's say I have this guy, and I have something that forms an intransitive, and then I also have a way to form a ditransitive, and then I have an indirect causative. This is entirely possible under that conception.